This is the one time during the course of the year that I have the opportunity to serve as chair for a very brief moment. So happy holidays and welcome. I'd ask that you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the annual organizational meeting of the board, and it's organized around our bylaw 9321, and I notice we have a quorum. And in order for the election of chairperson, I need to appoint an acting secretary. Jody Ms. Archer, would you be willing to do that?
I'd be happy.
Thank you. So we need to entertain nominations for chairperson of the Board of Education here in Waterford. Are there any nominations? Jody?
I'd like to nominate Kathleen McCarty as chairperson of the Board of Ed for the next year.
Second. I think with this we don't require a second, but we do still have nominations open if there are other nominations. Hearing none, nominations are closed. All in favor of Kathleen McCarty serving as the chairperson of the Waterford Board of Education, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Motion passes, and we need to record the votes that it's a unanimous vote on the part of all in attendance tonight. So, Kathleen, I pass over to
And a fine
That
job.
was about a minute and a half.
And a fine job you did.
Good job, Jerry.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to serve again, and thank you for the confidence you placed in me. At this time, I would ask if there's a nomination for secretary.
I'll make a nomination for Jody.
Thank you, Kevin. As Jerry pointed out, we do not need a second. Is there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll consider nominations closed, and we can move to a vote. All those in favor of Jody Ms. Archer serving as secretary, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That moves us right to into our introduction of visitors.
I'd like to welcome Pat Fedor, who represents our Administrative Association. Martha Shoemaker is out of town this evening, and as you can see, it must be the holiday season. We have a light attending crowd tonight, so those are our guests that are here this evening, as well as our administrative team.
Thank you, Jerry. Are there any comments from our guests this evening? Does anyone like to make any comments? Okay, hearing none, that moves us right to our first presentation this evening. Is Ms. Asia Langley?
It is my pleasure to introduce Asia Langley, who is a junior at Waterford High School. In addition to being an outstanding student, is also an outstanding swimmer. And Andre Hauser's principal of Waterford High School has a brief introduction.
Okay, come on up here. Now, Asia's a great kid. She's also a great student. She's on the honor roll. She's taking a rigorous course load, including advanced placement in U.S. history as a junior. She is involved in our student council. But the reason she's here tonight is because she's one of the best swimmers in the state. She recently won the Class S state title for 100-yard butterfly, which is a new event for her to be winning. It's not the first time she's won a state title, though. This is her 5th Class S swimming title. As a sophomore, let's see, the 50-yard freestyle and the 100-yard freestyle. And as a freshman, she won the 50-yard freestyle and the 100-yard butterfly.
Yeah.
So, a tremendous swimmer, a tremendous student, and a great representative of Waterford High School.
It is so nice to meet you, and I know swimming is a very competitive sport, so I'd like to present you with the Certificate of Recognition in acknowledgement of your outstanding achievement, 2013 Class State Swimming Champion, 100-yard butterfly class. Thank you. This is on behalf of the entire Board of Education, our administration. Thank you so much. Good luck to you. You have one more year. Yes, one more year. Thank you.
Congratulations. We've got a fan club. okay.
Presentations are always our best part of our Board of Education meetings, and thank you again. I think Ed Crane is going to give the board an update on technology, and did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think it's timely as we've moved into the new high school and completing our technology our construction projects, as well as the technology aspect of each school, to really give you a sense as to where we are with the new high school. But in addition to that, the next step in our phase of our integration of technology into daily instruction and the requirements that lie ahead for us, and there'll be a little bit of a snapshot of what Ed will be sharing with you during the budget workshop. So, Ed Craig.
The first thing I'd like to share with you guys is we have Kelly Barnes found this clip of students being able to prove their thinking by manipulating the angles on the Promethean board in geometry class.
You just need to turn the slide.
It'll flip.
There.
So, this is Bill Bassett's geometry class.
Well, it's really great how interactive these boards are, and it's just not for the teacher, it's really for the students as well, to get up and share their thinking and use this technology tool.
And then on the active votes, and interactive whiteboards have enabled students to interact with concepts. Teachers at the high school are now able to access class knowledge by formatively assessing students during the lesson using these active votes. So pictured on this slide are students answering math questions with the votes, and technology enables the teacher to make informed decisions and modify the instruction accordingly. So these are shots from high school and Promethean board with the students using the active votes. Particularly these are active expressions because they have more buttons on them, more feedback to be able to use. Here you see high school kids again engaging in a Skype conversation with a former student who currently resides in Paraguay. This conversation was spoken entirely in Spanish, and I'm told it was an amazing experience for everybody in the classroom. These are the computer labs in the high school. They're really popular places for students and teachers alike. Students and teachers use Google Apps and cloud-based applications to do their homework and communicate, collaborate with other teachers and students. The Media Center here shown is doubled in popularity since the move to the new high school. It's really taken off. The Media Center day begins at 6:45 a.m. every morning with students checking out the netbooks, the Chromebooks, and utilizing the 4 interactive whiteboards in the library. In this picture, we see students in the CAD lab. New technology has allowed students to use software and hardware, which they will see in colleges or in the workplace. The CAD program that they use is a dynamic 3D modeling application which allows the students to produce a prototype using our 3D printer. This is the video production lab, which consists of a computer lab for producing the videos and also a studio. The morning announcements no longer need to take place over the loudspeaker. In addition, students have been broadcasting live events with the portable video streaming system. It enables the entire school community to watch and participate by logging onto the system from their own workstations, even if they can't physically be at the location where the event is being held. Regional printers is a new system we've deployed recently. It allows students and staff to use their RFID badges to print. The students and staff really love the printers. If you walk down the halls, you always see staff and students using this technology. In addition, the printers come with management components which allow administrators an opportunity to compare costs of what the students are printing, what the teachers are printing. RFID badges. Carrying and wearing ID badges around high school has become the norm. The ID badges have been critical in moving about the building for staff and students because they're such an essential part of the daily routine. It has a double benefit as safety is a growing concern in our schools.
Students can check in if they're tardy to school, working through paying for their lunches from their accounts. It's really turned to be a very valuable tool at the new high school.
And the system's in place, so whatever we want to add on to it, it's there in the future. So I just shared with you all the new technologies and existing technologies that we're using out there. And we've been doing the construction of new schools over the past 5-6 years. So that has actually, the construction process has helped fund some of our technology. So what I'm showing here is for the computers in particular, back in 2001 through 2005, we had a 5-year replacement plan for any computer in the school district. As the technology got better, we were able to get one more year out of the computer. So in 2006, we changed the life expectancy of the computers to 6 years. And now we're trying a new thing called virtual desktops for additional cost savings, which we're doing a pilot this year at Quaker, next year at Quaker Hill, where we're going to reuse the old computers and put software on them so that they act like new computers, basically. They're fast. So they'll go from slow to fast, but we won't change any hardware. So that's the plan for the next budget year. This slide shows the history of the technology budget back from 2004 till current and beyond. As you notice, it was up by around 400,000. It was actually 425,000. Back in 2004, there was no construction going on, and we had to replace computers, when they needed to be replaced when they're 5 years old at that time. So you see that line, and then when we came into the construction era, it drops down very drastically down to 150,000, 130,000. Little spikes here and there, but basically the trend is construction came along and the costs came down because we were able to utilize that funding for the computers. However, the construction's done now, and now we're rolling into a new era where we have all this great technology, but we have a couple schools that are coming up due for new computers. And as I was speaking before, what we want to do to save money is reuse the old computers, but there's still a cost to that. So I'm going to be requesting a higher amount for the budget, this upcoming budget. And this slide kind of explains that.
We actually had a break due to the construction and really were to, we had the opportunity to really outfit each of the schools, have a very robust network installed. And, when Ed talks about the 6-year replacement plan, believe it or not, Quaker Hill and Clark Lane, we're approaching that 6-year replacement component. And for all of you, it probably seems like yesterday, but believe it or not, it's 6 years. And so as we've been going through our own internal development of the budget, we recognize and realize we now have 2 schools that are coming back into cycle. And so it's important to keep in mind, and we shared this last year during the budget process, no different than having that 1-year warranty in the new high school. The equipment for maintenance and repair, the warranty will run out this year, and so as we look at 14-15, we need to budget accordingly. And as Ed's sharing with you, this gives you an historical perspective of the equipment budget in the area of technology, and we're now looping back to that 6-year cycle, and we're not into construction. So we as a community will need to start to absorb those costs. So Ed has really, along with his staff, really been looking at ways that we don't spike back up to the 400,000. And so he introduced the virtual concept to all of us, and it's working in many places. And as we get into the workshops, you'll have an opportunity to go into greater depth.
Okay. So talk about the SBAC at that point.
Yeah.
Were you going to talk, are you going to talk about one more piece of this? Or did you want to ask your question now?
I can ask it later, or I can ask it now. Whatever the chair.
Okay.
The software update to the hardware, how long will that extend the life of the hardware?
It's a pilot, so we're hoping for 5 years on that. But it's hard to predict what's going to happen 5 years from now. The hardware itself will still run, but it's hard to predict what the requirements are going to.
What's the cost differential between the software upgrade as opposed to a hardware upgrade? And what would be the lifespan of the hardware upgrade? That's something I think we want to look at budget time.
One of the drivers behind this also is that we already have this virtual desktop software that's running at the high school. So the proposal is going to be lumping those Quaker Hill computers onto the high school system. So it'll get the software from the high school. There just will be some licensing costs for the virtual desktop software per machine. And when you look at that, compared to purchasing a new machine, we're looking at somewhere around 30 to 40% less than purchasing brand new hardware, brand new machine, or even less, because we're looking at ways that right now we're thinking we may have to buy a piece of hardware which is lumped in there to allow this to happen, a card for each computer called a PCOIP card, and that may not be necessary. So we're really looking at this, and the cost may be less than 30-40%.
But normal workstation is about $600.
Yeah.
And you're thinking that to outfit in the virtual machine would be about $200 per unit.
Yeah, and that can go less.
And so if you're buying a $600 computer, the life expectancy, the Greg's question would be about 6 years. And we're hoping with only a $200 investment per machine to extend to 5 years. So we think there's a pretty good return on investment.
Did you want to talk about this here at all?
About this slide?
Yeah.
Right. Right. So I think as Jerry mentioned for a second there, we over the next, and it goes back to that slide, the graph slide, where it kind of shows the future budget requests for the IT budget being level funded for the next 3 years, because basically we're going to hit upgrade the technology at Quaker Hill next. We're going to ask for that next year, and then the year after would be Oswegatchie, and the year after that would be Great Neck. Each year we'd also do a third of Clark Lane, so it would be the cost of the elementary plus a third of Clark Lane after 3 years. So that's how we'd be leveling out the request. And I don't know if there's any other questions.
Thank you. Joe, did you want to?
I just have a question. How are the Promethean boards holding up?
They're pretty good. Yep. The projectors, we kind of did some phased approach at Clark Lane, because those projectors were like before the technology really caught up, and they didn't have any connectors on them, I think, so they were shaking because there was some issues with them. So we kind of replaced the Clark Lane as a whole. We're almost finished with that. The rest of the schools are great. The 3 elementary schools, we can keep those running by just replacing them if they totally break, one case-by-case basis. So we don't have any plans to do any mass replacement of those. And the boards themselves are fine. We haven't.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, the boards themselves don't need any replacement.
I was just curious to see how they're holding up, because they were new. Well, not anymore, but they were new.
They don't replace any of the boards at all. And as you're saying, this projector was our first school construction project at Clark Lane. The technology has changed so much that we did replace some of those, but we don't anticipate replacing those at the elementary nor at the high school.
And the boards don't have as many upgrades as computers do?
Not at all.
Okay.
Because they rely on a computer for the
Oh, okay.
to do that. And
That's good to know.
also the nice thing about the boards at the elementary schools and the high school and now Clark Lane is that the projectors are now close to the board. So when the teacher is instructing up there, there's a lot less shadowing that used to go on at Clark Lane, where they just stand in front of the board and wherever they are, it disappears. Now they can work with the short throw projectors much better.
Thank you.
And thank you for presenting us with this plan. It's always interesting for the board to see it in action too. And I'd also like to commend you and the administration for really looking at this out for 3 years and stabilizing the cost so that we don't have a large spike that we're used to having a technology plan. And it's all in accordance with the template and everything that we already approved up until 2015, I believe that was. So thank you very much.
If I could, Ed, before you leave, I'd like to acknowledge the work that Ed has done, not only in the district, but in particular at the Waterford High School. Some of us know the difficulty that we were running in with the area of technology. Quite frankly, we fired the technology consultant and we had Ed take over the project. The reason you got to see those early slides tonight about the high school is all due to the work of Ed and his staff. We dropped everything. One Friday afternoon, we made a decision and said to Ed, do you think you can pull it off? He said, I can do it. And he could, with flying colors. I mean, just spectacular. On schedule, under budget. We opened the school last April. Things ran smoothly. The training was in place for the staff before we walked in, and it was a monumental task with all the vendors. We're talking about significant dollars, coordinating, and I honestly felt like we had Bill Gates, at the throttle throughout the entire project. Now, I got to tell you, Ed, you were spectacular.
Thank you.
So I just really wanted to acknowledge the work that you did in front of the Board of Education. So thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments. I think we were lucky to have you here, Ed, and your expertise. So I echo your comments. Thank you. That takes us right to the school performance report, and I think
So if I could just kind of do a little bit of an introduction and pass this off to Craig. So little did we know when we did the fall presentation on CMT and CAP, we knew that something was in the works. Well, something in the works is in front of you this evening. You received it in your packet, and it's the district school performance report that each of the 169 communities across the state of Connecticut recently received. And no different than with CMT or Strategic School Profile, we have an obligation to really share that information with you. And so one of the things I would like to do this evening is kind of give you a snapshot, answer any questions that you might have, and Craig's put together this presentation. So Craig.
Thank you. So, as you are probably aware, the Elementary and Secondary Act became a federal law back in 1965. The overall goal of that law is unchanged, which is to close the achievement gap. The law introduced the concept of title funds, which we received Title I, Title II, Title IIA, Title III funds. The law also took a new name a decade ago called NCLD, which you probably recall. And that goal of NCLD was to have everyone reach proficiency by 2014. As we move in an area of continuous improvement, the State Department has amended and asked for a waiver, and this student performance report is now part of that. And it's, again, with continuous improvement in mind, and again, to close the achievement gap is the major goal. That goes over that. Some new terms.
We have a whole new vocabulary.
Familiarize yourself with, because in education there's all sorts of acronyms, and I don't want to throw out more acronyms that you don't understand. So there are all these acronyms for performance. So we have the individual performance index, the school performance index, the district performance index. I'll speak about those in a little bit. When we talk about graduation rate, that was really codified. There was a myriad of ways to define graduation rates within Connecticut and throughout the United States. And in 2009, we there was a decision to track individual cohorts of students who enter grade 9 and basically assume that high school is a 4-year track and see how many people achieve that graduation within 4 years. There is a new term called holding power, and that used to be referred to as extended graduation rate, and that really is to give credit for the students that are still enrolled after 4 years, which includes students with disabilities who earn special education certificate upon completion, and we have some of our students until they're 21. Classifications of schools. So there had been a couple classifications that the state has been using for its lowest performing schools. So the terms review, focus, and turnaround are not new concepts to the lowest performing districts. And if you remember back in No Child Left Behind, meeting AYP was a concept. Those districts that were below AYP were kind of falling into this level. However, there are new classifications that really now catch all schools. And so there's excelling, progressing, transitioning, plus the 3 I just spoke about. I'll define those in a moment. When we talk about subgroups, we're really talking about students with disabilities, race, socioeconomic reasons, and language barriers. And there's also a designation called School with Distinction, and that's for the highest performing schools statewide. This is with respect to all students and or with respect to subgroups of students and or among students making the most progress. And so really this is a way to say we want to acknowledge all children moving ahead academically, where the shortfall of NCLB really was, which really we only counted kids that went achieved from below basic or basic into that proficient band, and that was sort of the benchmark. Now, as we excel across all achievement bands, there's credit for that. So, with that new vocabulary, there'll be a quiz at the end. The goals of this new system is for schools to achieve an 88 index or higher, and the ultimate goal is for schools to achieve that by 2024. So it's almost extended out NCLB 10 more years. The good news, which you'll see in a moment, is that we are very close to achieving that goal now. The 4-year cohort graduation rate should be at 94% or higher, and the holding power rate should be at 96% or higher. So as we look at then all the schools across Connecticut, there are 820 schools that are elementary and middle schools that take the CMT, and you can see by that top band with blue being the lowest performing and orange to your right being the highest performing, how many schools fall within each band. You'll also see the 206 high schools across Connecticut that take the CAPT, again, the same band. Now, defining the 5 classifications. So to be classified in that top band of excelling, you have to have an overall school performance index of 88 or above. More than 25% of your students actually score in the advanced range in the majority of subjects tested. The majority of the subgroup gaps are less than 10 SPI, or School Performance Index points, from the target. And CMT and CAP participation rate is at least 95%. High schools have a little extra burden in the sense that their graduation rate has to be 94% and their holding power within 96%. As we look at progressing school criteria, similar, overall 80%, 88 SPI or above. Participation rates the same, but they might miss one or more of the criteria that I just referred to in the excelling. If the school performance index is within a 64 to 87, then schools must meet all of the SBI targets for 2012-13, and the majority of subgroup gaps are less than 10 percentage or index points from the target. You see, for progressing high schools, the 4-year cohort graduation rate is, the cut point is 90%, where the holding power is at 93, so a little bit less. Transitioning schools, the overall SPI is between 64 and 87. Participation rate is the same, and these schools miss one or more of the progression criteria. And then the other classifications I'll touch upon, they don't really apply to us at this point in time or as we envision in the future, which would be a review school. That would be an SPI below 64. A focus school is a Title I school, and again, lowest performing in the state. And a turnaround school is sort of an action taken by the State Board of Ed to really almost assume control. Looking at Waterford, our district overall performance. Remember, the district performance index of 88 is the goal. And as you can see, we're very close to achieving that goal in all areas. The CMT index range from 2009 to the present has ranged from 87.5 to 88, so there's been a fluctuation of 0.6 over those years. If we think about an elementary school having 200 students in grades 3 through 5 for a moment, it really only takes, moving 2 students to really get a percentage point. So when we're talking about the end size of our schools, and even though our schools may be closer to right under 400, we have K-5 schools, so the tested is only about 200. It won't take much to really move up a little bit. Our CAP index scores, as you can see in the middle column, has steadily increased from 78.5 to 87.9. So we look at now how you calculate an SPI. As I mentioned earlier, you get sort of points as you move up academic bands. And so if for students that are only achieving in the below basic, there's no points attributed to that. If a student scored in the tested areas, which is reading, writing, and math, in a basic level, there's 33 points associated with that. Proficient, 67, and gold and advanced at 100. And so you can see the weightedness of this, showing that as we move our kids academically to higher and higher standards, the SPI will go up. For the alternative assessments, the students, the 3% of the students who may not take the standard assessment, there's the gold, proficient, or basic band, and it's 100 points, 50 points, or 0. So if we take a 3rd grade example, 3rd grade student takes 3 tests, reading, writing, and math, compared to a 5th grade student who might take that 4th test of science. If we think about they received a proficient level in math, a gold level in reading, an advanced level in writing, then the student would have an individual performance score of 89. And that was calculated by really looking at proficient at 67, gold at 100, advanced at 100, divided by 3. So that's how you really achieve these index scores. Now, looking at each of our schools. Waterford High School is classified as a progressing school, which means that the CAPS participation rate was achieved at 95%, and the 4-year graduation rate was at least 90, and as you can see, they achieved it at 92.1. The holding power rate was at least 93, and they achieved it at 95. Where they missed to get from progressing to excelling was really the graduation rates did not achieve that excelling criteria of 94% for the graduation of the holding power of 96%. As you can see from the subject areas, in all 4 areas the targets were achieved, and in 2 of the 4 areas, reading and writing, the students' performance exceeded the overall goal of 88. In the subgroups, and there's only 2 reported because, again, you need at least 20 students, and this would be only the 10th graders at the high school taking this exam, and that's why there was only 208 students. You need at least 20 to make a subgroup. And so in our 2 subgroups, they still have more than 10-point achievement gap, but again, that's not unknown. This is the same information we reported to you in August. The conclusions, the high school really needs to continue to increase its graduation rates and meet the needs of really the special ed students. We've heard that in August, and we're working towards that. Clark Lane Middle School is classified as excelling and achieved a School of Distinction status, which meant that the overall SPI was above 88, and as you can see, in 2012-13, the SPI for Clark Lane was 91.2. It also means that more than 25% of the students scored advanced in the majority of subject areas tested. And it also means that the majority of subgroups gaps are less than 10 SPI points from the target, and you can see where 3 out of the 5 groups are within that 10-point range. And the participation rate was also achieved. You can see that all subject areas exceeded the goal of 88, and the majority of subgroups, as I said, closed the gap. Basically, the conclusions for Clark Lane is a highly effective learning system in place at that school. And when we talk about the population of Clark Lane, all students at Clark Lane get tested, so 6, 7, 8. So they have the largest testing pool. Clark Lane, just to back up for a moment, also received the School of Distinction, and that school was awarded that for the highest performing subgroup, Black African American subgroup, and the overall highest performance. And so the State Department has identified 73 schools this year with schools of distinction, and Clark Lane is one. Great Neck Elementary School, and you'll see a similar thread throughout all of our elementaries. Classified as transitioning, which means the overall SPI was between 64 and 87, and that was achieved. The participation rate was 95% or higher achieved. And when we talk about transitioning schools, it missed 1 or more of the progressing criteria. And so if we look at the SPI targets for 2012-13, they were not achieved, and the majority of the subgroup gaps were less than 10 points from the target. If we look at the subject areas, 3 of the 4 areas were within 2 points of obtaining their target. Reading, though, was the lowest subject area, and again, that was reported back in August. Subgroups, reading support is still needed. Subgroup performance are within 10 points of the whole school. The general conclusion, we're working on reading. We're continuing to try to meet the needs of our special ed students. And as you recall, this past year, each elementary school was afforded a math coach part-time. And that person's other part-time job is really the TAG program for that school. And so that's one way to support a school. And it's still, there's a need for additional reading support. We have ideas in the upcoming budget to present to you around that. If we look at Oswegatchie, we'll see a similar theme. classification is transitioning. The FCI was between 64 and 87%. The participation rate was about 95%. They did not meet all of their targets for 2012-13. And if we look at the subject areas, 2 out of 4 subject areas, reading and writing, were achieved. Reading is still the lowest of the subject areas for Oswegatchie. None of the subgroup targets were achieved, and the achievement gap is still present. And so, similar conclusions, as I've stated before. For Quaker Hill, also classified as transitioning. If we look at the subject areas, 3 of the 4 areas were within 2 points of attaining the target. Reading, again, was the lowest subject area. Again, the subgroups still need some work. And so, with this report, what are some takeaways? That student performance K-12 perspective tell us that we see continual growth over time. Using the CAP and CMT measuring stick, Clark Lane ranks in the top 10% of the middle schools in Connecticut. Waterford High School ranks in the top 15% of the high schools in Connecticut, and our elementary schools rank in the top 40% of the schools in Connecticut. At our elementary level, our students' performance are very close to the state target. Our overall was 87.7. Again, 88 is the goal. So, indeed, there's a very strong performance district-wide. We are aware that there is a disparity in student performance amongst our students with disabilities and those receiving free and reduced lunch. And this report will guide further review of the students' service needs, and as we review those, if necessary, we'll make modifications and or be asking for some additions. It's more valuable really to look at Waterford Public School at the numbers of students rather than the percentage points, because, as I said, within 1 or 2 students there could be that fluctuation. It is important to look at the subgroups, and we are really looking at each and every student here in Waterford. But this report does, I think, give us an additional perspective to the data that I shared in August. So with that, I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions from the board?
I just have one. Have we ever looked, I know it'll be extra work, but have we ever looked at the students that started with us through and see how they do rather than the students that come in 3rd grade or come in 5th grade?
Yeah, we have done sort of that cohort analysis, and it's very, very strong. So when we say there's really, growth over time, where, our elementaries maybe, say 3rd grade, if you think about the historical data, 3rd grade is a little bit low, but as we go up into the upper elementaries and certainly the middle school, the achievement really grows. And so the students that stay with us over time, I think, are excelling.
Craig, maybe you could just address this with the change now that's coming up with the Common Core. And how does the school performance report, will that all be changed? And then we'll have to learn all new acronyms and
Well,
go through all of it.
it's a great question. So, I am unsure what data we would have with respect to an SPI based upon this year's data, because many of the districts in Connecticut have chosen to do the field test for SBAC. Some are still doing the CMT test, which means that it's very hard to do statewide comparable if there's not a statewide assessment. And I have my reservations about even next year when we do a full year implementation, because we'll be collecting baseline data. So I think the concepts, though, and the vocabulary that was introduced today would stay but it might be on a pause while we go through this transition.
Thank you for your very comprehensive overview. I think it helps us really look at in the district where we need to improve. But if I may just have this moment, I would like to recognize Parkland Middle School for its excellent, for this category and for the school being a school of distinction. And I think this is your second year, if I recall, taking that into school of distinction last year too. So it's wonderful news. The high school and the elementary schools. I think overall, if we look at the district, we're really improving and there's growth there, and we're targeting those areas that we need improvement. So congratulations to everyone for all of the hard work, and thank you for your report. I don't think, I didn't see any questions this way. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. That takes us right to our consent agenda. Are there any corrections or comments concerning the consent agenda? Not. Would someone like to make a motion to include the minutes of November 19th, the monthly expenditure report for November 2013, and the food service financial report for October 2013?
So moved.
Jody? Dave, second. If there are no comments, we'll move to vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Takes us right to the reading and review of any correspondence received. Mr. Belair?
I have no correspondence at this time.
Okay. I have new correspondence except Michelle, I don't think from your report in any way, except that just from the case, the legislative breakfast, I don't know whether you were going to mention that. I received correspondence in that regard. I think it's coming up in January for Region 9, January 22nd.
Marco High School.
Marco High School, and we'll get more to you on that.
Yep.
That's the only correspondence I have. So that moves us right to your report, Jerry.
I have a few items to share with you tonight. I placed at your tables 2 articles. Great article last Friday on Joan Winters in the New London Day, and then also a press release that came out in the Waterford Patch regarding a grant for Oswegatchie School. So 2 really nice pieces of news and some nice recognition for our school district. So the cat is out of the bag. We have 2 administrative retirements. I shared with the board last Friday, and both Dr. Glenda Dexter talked to her faculty at Quaker Hill last Friday, and each and every time Becky Amonte planned to tell the high school staff we had a snowstorm. So I said to her, I said, you can't even tell me when you're going to do it. So today, I think this afternoon, she had the opportunity to announce to the staff. So we have 2 tremendous people who have given a great deal to the Waterford Public Schools. And as I said to you on Friday in my note, significant contributions to our students, our faculty, and our town and district. So congratulations to both of them.
Just for one moment, because we didn't know whether or not we should express it publicly because we didn't want to interrupt. But I would also like to say, on behalf of the Board of Education, that we're not saying goodbye yet. We have the rest of the year, but we certainly will miss the great work for our principal up at Quaker Hill, Glenda Dexter, and also to our assistant principal at the high school. So just from the Board of Education to know that you really will be sorely missed, but we're not saying goodbye tonight. Okay.
I just wanted to let you know that the development of the FY15 fiscal plan is on schedule. We're planning to release that to you on Thursday, January 2nd, or certainly no later than Friday, January 3rd, and then we have our first workshop the following week. So I'll attach the agendas to those workshops. So it's not about a full review of the budget all at once in a week. There's certain cost centers, and then in the second week. So, the approach that you want to take for yourself to get familiar with that document, but just know through our workshops, all of the administrative team will be presenting their cost center, and we'll have a great opportunity for back and forth with questions. Kathleen and I are extending an invitation to the RTM as well as to the Board of Finance to join our workshops, and Kathleen did that the other night at the RTM when we presented the WASA contract, so just wanted to give you an update there. Also, you notice work samples from Oswegatchie School on display on both of the bulletin boards, so please take the opportunity before you leave tonight to take a look at the great quality of work on the part of our students over at Oswegatchie. I just wanted to recognize students at Waterford High School. We have a staff member who is dealing with an illness, Josh Udy, and the girls volleyball team. Jump in and correct me if I misspeak, but Craig and I have had the opportunity to join the faculty, the staff, and the students on a couple of events, really celebrating Josh and letting him know that we all care very deeply. And the kids have created a phenomenal video. Do we now have it on the homepage of the high school?
Yes, there's a link to it. It's posted on YouTube, but we've got a link from the front page of the high school website. You click on it. It's called Udi Nation, sort of a takeoff on the Lancer Nation theme that we've got. And it's going to be updated with the final piece that we did at the end of last week. Right now it's about 6.5 minutes long. If you watch it, I strongly suggest you have a couple of tissues handy. We showed it to the kids in the field house during advisory at the end of last week. And there was not a dry eye. It's a remarkable video. A great tribute to an excellent teacher, excellent coach, excellent member of the school community.
Yeah, so just wanted to acknowledge the work, and the kids just took charge of it. The kids were just phenomenal, and it was a lot of fun being out on the field and doing the wave, and I'm sure it lifted the spirits. So kudos to the high school students. That's all I have to report this evening.
Thank you for sharing that report with the board. Particularly, I think it's nice to hear that our students care so much about their teacher and to do the video. And I'm sure the board will take a look at the video. So thank you for sharing that. We send, of course, our best wishes to Mr. Udy that he feels better. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sharon. Under committee and other reports. I know you have a report.
We had a school building committee meeting in a snowstorm the other night. Anyway, these are the reviews of December, what's going on. Just pass them down.
Yeah.
So you could read them at your own leisure. Our ONG is going to be finished in April.
Maybe.
And they have, hopefully, and they have a lot of a big punch list that they're going to be working on, and our break right now is going to help out a lot. They're going to get a lot of work done during the Christmas break. And those of you that are interested in the dance club, they're going to install the curtain divider in the old gym, so the dance club can practice at the high school now. And thank you to Park Lane for letting them use your facility during the fall. They appreciated it. Youth Service Bureau, we did not have a meeting this month because of the special projects they had on the adoptive families. But on behalf of the Youth Service Bureau, we wanted to thank everybody that participated. We had more families than last year that needed help this year, and hopefully a lot of children are going to be very happy Christmas morning. We'll have some nice things under their tree. Do you want to give the early childhood report? Okay.
Thank you, Jody. You'd like to give the report on the green food?
Oh, yes. We have a date set for the dedication of the Waterford High School Field House. The name will be changed to Francis X. Sweeney Field House, and that's going to be on Friday, January 3rd at 6:45. It's going to be between the girls' game they're playing in London at 5:30, I think, 5 or 5:30, 5. And then the boys will play right after that at 7:15, 7:30, depending on when the dedication ceremony ends. But the food class, they're going to provide refreshments after, and the portrait of Fran will be hung. If we don't have the portrait, we'll have a picture of it there. But a lot of people in town are really looking forward to that, and I'm so glad it's...
We'll do a press release.
It is here. Oh, great. Great. That's great.
So we're working on it.
Yeah. So I just wanted to thank the administration and all of our committee members for making this happen. It was just phenomenal. It came together in such a short... Yeah, very... I mean, it took 10 years to finally do it, but once we had permission to do it, it just came together, and it's just great. I'm so happy for his family.
Thank you, Jody. I too would like to recognize the administration and particularly Craig Powers for the great work in getting the brochure, getting all the work, and keeping us all organized. I think it'll be a lovely evening, and everyone's invited to the card still out there. Yep. So you should have your card, and now hopefully people will turn out for the celebration. Thank you, Jody. Just quickly, the Waterford Education Foundation, I know, met December the 11th, and I believe a brochure is in the making or has been published and will be, I think they're actively pursuing contributions, so keep your eye out, and the spelling bee will go on again next March. Under Friendship School, I'm not going to say too much because the Friendship School management, our superintendent will give a nice report in 2 moments, but the Friendship School calendar is out, though, and there will be 3 meetings in 2014 coming up. It reminds me that committee work for this board we will also have to put on our next agenda, so keep in mind you'll receive the list of all the committees, and there'll be some openings on the Friendship School. We also had I'll just finish where I am, and then I'm going to turn to finance video, but we had a policy meeting recently. You'll see in a few moments a very aggressive policy commitment. We have this year 33 policies to review, and you'll be receiving several of them at each of the Board of Education meetings coming up. And that leads us to the Finance Committee, which just met earlier this evening, and so we get the complete and accurate details. So I'm going to turn it over to our expert here in Bob Straczynski. I'd like to just give an overview to the board of the meeting we just had.
Glad to. Finance Subcommittee met for 45 minutes this afternoon for tonight's board meeting. It was an update on the major accounts, which comprise roughly 90% of the budget where we stand through the end of November. The plan as part of the budget process, at the end of December, we'll have reached the 6-month level. At the January board meeting, we'll be doing a presentation on 6 months actual expense and where we see the year ending. So we'll get into much greater depth at that point in time. But what I'll do now is just do a brief recap of what we discussed at the meeting. I would like to point out to everyone that on your financial report that you got for the month of November, there's a new column on there. It's called the Budget Reserve column. And it's the column that's in between your encumbered or requisition column and the budget balance column. That column basically is synonymous with encumbered expenses. It's basically funds that are reserved to meet expected expenses that the Board of Ed will have to meet during the year. Primarily it's for expected salary expenses related to grant-funded positions and other hourly or non-contracted positions that the financial system doesn't have the ability to encumber. Grant positions, positions that are funded partially by grant funds and the balance by Board of Ed funds, they're first, as those expenses are realized, they're paid for out of the grant funds, and the grant funds reside in Fund 200. So the funds are encumbered there. That's why we can't encumber them here. Once the grant fund has been exhausted, then the expenses that the board is liable for are paid out of the board's budget. So this column that relates to salaries for grant positions, that's what's in the budget reserve item. Came up with the term budget reserve, expenses reserved, funds reserved. If anyone can think of a better terminology, I'm glad to change it to meet your needs, but that's the term we're using for it. And I think it would be okay as long as we all understand what that column is. So basically it's synonymous with encumbered expenses. So the items that we talked about tonight were salaries, health insurance, transportation, tuitions, and utilities. As far as those items go, salaries represent roughly 62% of the budget. We're expecting to have a favorable budget balance at the end of the year due to unfilled positions, vacant positions, and staff turnover. Health insurance, which is 14% of your budget, if you notice, basically at budget or a little bit over right now. The Board of Ed's self-funded portion is the journal entry that does that full year has been entered. So we're not going to see continual expenses adding to it throughout the year. Jerry, myself, Rudy Deers, Dan Stewart met with our broker last week, I believe it was, on Thursday, and insurance claims are tracking pretty much as expected, not too much deviation. So at this point in time, we seem to be doing okay with regard to our self-insurance. Transportation, 5% of your budget. I'm expecting to have a positive balance of between $80,000 and $90,000 at the end of the year in special ed transportation. Kathy and I met and went over all of the placements, transportation needs, and so on and so forth. And a lot of this is due to a combination of our placements and expanded utilization of the van service. We also discussed that in the near future we will be asking for permission or going through the proper channels to request the purchase of the fourth van that we discussed at the previous meeting. This will give us more flexibility, it will improve our service, we can expand the services, and we'll be able to meet emergencies.
That would come from this balance in this particular line item.
And also, in the tuition account, that's 5% of your budget. There's two line items in there that show a significant credit balance under the credit amount under the budget item, and that's related to the excess cost reimbursements or expected reimbursements. Excess cost payments are done by the state in February and May, so we won't see any activity in those two accounts until those two time frames. And Kathy and I met and reviewed the current students who will be qualifying to meet the excess cost threshold. And it looks at this point in time that our reimbursements, as long as the state rates stay within budget levels, we should be getting those reimbursements that we actually do get will be pretty close to what the budget is, so we don't have an issue there. And the last item, utilities, which represent 3% of the budget for fuel, electricity, and diesel fuel, they're going to track pretty close to where the budget expectations were. The wild card in all of this is Brooklyn High School. This is the first full year of geothermal. So when I'm doing my forecast, I don't have any past history in terms of how many kilowatt hours will be utilized during high usage months of the winter time. I define high usage as November through March. We had summer to compare with, but nothing during the heating period. And I'm pleased that the last bill, which covers the period of November and in part of December, the kilowatt hours were about 5,000 less than I had expected. Right now, on a high month, about 290,000 kilowatt hours. So we seem to be doing okay so far. So
Bob, as long as we keep the lights off, we'll be fine.
So the basic takeaway overall from the budget standpoint is tracking pretty much according to expectations in a lot of these areas, and it looks like we're going in a favorable direction, and we'll have unexpected funds in some of these accounts.
Just for the board's clarification, the Finance Committee was very pleased to receive this favorable report and strongly recommends the purchase of the fourth van. So just for your information, that will come back to the...
We'll have it on the agenda to take action in January.
Thank you very much for that report. Are there any questions for Bob from the board? Hearing none, thank you very much. And I think that's it. Do we have another? Oh, Kevin, on Kate, did you want to...
Well, just the preface, and then the other thing is Kate will be in Mystic again next year. However, the year after, there's been a lot of pressure over the last few years to move it up towards the Hartford area. They were actually thinking about that for next year, but there was another commitment for Mystic next year, so they decided to go ahead and commit. So.
And I thank the board members that attended the convention.
Yeah.
Thank you. That takes us to a nice report.
Yeah, I have some good news to share. We have been very active over the last 2.5, 3 years to really advocate for some financial relief for the education of our pre-K students over at the Magnet School, at the Friendship School, in particular for our 3- and 4-year-olds. We learned at the very end of the legislation in June that the legislature took favorable action to reimburse, so to speak, I put that inside quotes, both New London and Waterford for the education of 3- and 4-year-olds. That means we will be receiving back $1 million for New London and Waterford for this year, and it's projected an additional $1 million for 14-15. So that certainly will provide some wonderful relief for us as we put together our fiscal plan for FY15. It didn't happen by accident. It's something that was taken a real concerted effort. We also engaged some parent groups across the state, and at least we have a commitment. We have a check in hand at Project Learn for the 12-13 year, and we're anticipating the second $1 million at the end of this fiscal year. So in thinking this through at our governing board meeting the other night, I proposed to the governing board that we think of it in the following way. We have a number of capital improvements that need to occur over at the Friendship School. One of the things in a magnet structure, you don't go back to the state capital improvements. You need to take on those expenditures. And so Project Learn has identified a number of needs, upgrade of the phone system, the security system, technology, some programmatic aspects as well. And so looking at the $1 million that we would be receiving for Waterford for those 2 years, looking at it in 4 different ways. That first, we put aside $250 for capital improvements. New London would do the same, and that would provide a fund of $500,000. That leaves $1.5 million to offset the tuition. And rather than take a credit all at once and have a significant spike in our budget in the following year, I mean, it would kill us, is really look at this over 3 years and really spread $250 over the next 3 years. However, in this fiscal year, the town has already committed to us $250,000. So we have that within our budget. So we would be returning that $250 to the town, along with the contingency teacher that we put into the budget because we didn't need it this time around. So we would share with the town that $250 would not be expended in our budget, plus the $63 I think we budgeted for the contingency. But for FY15 and FY16, we could reduce that tuition line by $250. And that would be a really good offset for us. And so in the discussion at the governing board the other evening, we took action at the governing board to, 1, accept the money, and 2, really to outline the plan as to how we would utilize those funds to really continue to reinvigorate the program at the Friendship School, but also to provide some financial relief to Waterford as well as New London. So I always enjoy giving this kind of need. So it's really the benefit of a lot of good work on the part of many people.
I'd just like to say that the governing board was very pleased to receive the news, and I would just like publicly to thank all those that played a role in it, including our legislators and everyone, as you said, the parent organizations that all pulled together. It was a commitment by the state in the early childhood to really offer preschool education for 3- and 4-year-olds, so we were very pleased to see that some of this money was coming back. And the governing board will hear more about the capital improvements, and we'll share that with the board as we hear them. Greg?
Educate me, because this is a little different than I understand it. The $1 million, does it go to Waterford? Does it go to Learn?
It goes to Learn. However, it's earmarked for Waterford and New London.
And that's the reason we don't have to turn it over to the town.
Correct.
And targeted to be used
For the Friendship School.
Okay.
Tuition, so because you have already used.
Right, so I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we love, we'd like to hear these with you, so thank you. That moves us to our policy, and pleased to see Mr. Howard with us this evening, just to...
It's called a marathon.
We have quite a few here, and Greg, I know, the board, at the last meeting, we did go over the first reading of the first 7 policies here this evening, and so tonight, and it will probably be asking... Yes, please, go right ahead.
We distributed this last Thursday at the policy subcommittee meeting, but this kind of gives you kind of a working outline, with tentative dates. We tried to cluster the policies with respect to key personnel, and so we've had our director of HR policy meetings, we've had our high school principal, we've had special service director, we've seen our high school principal again, director of finance for future ones. And so this is just sort of an outline of the work in vision, and the number of policies we'll be looking at gives us kind of an achievement date by May, which means that if we don't achieve this ambitiousness, then hopefully by June we will. But tonight, for a second reading, we have fundraising policy, which I'll be happy to, this is the second reading, I don't want to go over it again, but just be happy to kind of answer any questions.
I think I mentioned to the board, basically this one just moved everything to the regulations.
Correct.
So it's not really anything. Do you mind if, first I just want to thank Mr. Powers for having the insight to invite the specialist. As the board at the policy level goes through each policy, it's wonderful to have the experts there in the room to answer any of the questions that we may have. And it's been working very well, and prior to even coming to us, you do a lot of groundwork with legal counsel and making sure that we're following statutes. So we appreciate all the hard work that goes into it before it even reaches the policy and then the board. So
thank you. Many of these policies are sort of legislatively driven, but one of your board goals was really to expand that to see what else needs to really be refined, and so we do have a mixture.
So if we may, I think the best way, if you don't mind, could we go, I think we should take a motion on each one separately, so we'll go right through the first reading, series those 7, and we'll move right down to the... Oh, that's what I meant. I meant the second, but I meant the first one. Thank you. So we're looking at the second reading, which is the first series on your agenda. So do you want to do the... if there's any questions for Greg or board on the fundraising activities?
Move approval.
Okay, so
Second.
Second by Jody. There's no discussion. We can move to a vote on that one. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Greg takes us right to personnel.
And the next one is non-discrimination. This one was a little bit legislatively driven with some refinement in language. I don't know how far it really goes, since it was really discussed at the last meeting. So.
We did, and I think the only piece, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought we had said that we'd move just the wording at the end in the first paragraph up to the beginning, so that it just, after you read the full, it doesn't matter, I don't.
So I scrutinized over that, but honestly, I respectfully just thinking it's a stronger statement to say the Board of Education will not make employment decisions on these areas first, rather than put the qualifier in, and then put the qualifier in at the end. Otherwise, it seems, I don't know, it sounds like a mixed message as a strong statement from the board. So that's the only reason why you don't see that. However, it is the board's policy. So.
Well, I certainly don't object. It was just not when I read it and kept going back and forth. Because I don't object to leaving it the way it is at all. Just a moment. So yes, we did go over, and I think basically on this piece on personnel, it was to add in all of the gender identity and expression. We did speak about that. So there are no questions for Mr. Kelly. If somebody would like to make that motion to accept. Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kevin. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And that carries.
So the next policy was really driven, all puns intended, by the expansion of our van drivers. and you'll see the corrections from the first reading that were given by Greg.
Right, there should be one more right below
Just
that.
one?
Yeah, just the second reason, right below the first change. Just the switch from reason to good cause.
So a friendly amendment to also make that in the second.
When there is good cause to believe.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was the only change, and this policy again was put in because we have the van.
Correct.
To ensure that we had our van drivers tested. So, here we are. Somebody like to make the motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Jody. Is there a second? Second to accept this,
Just-
4112.4?
Just a question of information.
Yes.
Do our drivers have to have public service license?
They have to have a V endorsement.
Public service, a what?
V, letter V.
A V?
V endorsement. In order to drive a van, it's different than public service.
Okay. But do they still have to have, on their own, besides this, do they still have to have their bi-yearly, every 2-year physical
I believe,
to qualify for their license?
I don't think you have to if you're over the age of 60 years, 70 years of age, I think it's every 6 months. I'm positive off the top of my head, I can check that out for you.
We are working with
Come check my license.
Yeah,
Some
we
kind of
are working with
endorsement.
the service to make sure that the employment records and the driving records that we have to provide DOT are up to date. And so I do believe there is
Yeah, we had a
some
complete
sort of
audit.
health assessment, but I can't recall the years, so you're in the business. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll check the regulations.
Yeah, it's usually every 2 years, and they, it's basically, for stress, heart attack, stroke.
Yeah, I don't believe they, I'll check that.
It is a interesting question, if I may just say, because we don't have any, we have the initially there being physical exam, right, but we don't have to follow up whether or not it was,
Well, that would be a DMV regulation,
go in
maybe,
the thing.
but I don't know about the
Yeah,
D, that's what I'm
they're
saying.
required to be subjected to random drug drugs.
Okay.
this is fine.
I don't have that.
Yeah, they,
Okay. Thank you. Is there a motion then to accept?
There is a motion.
We did.
Oh,
We
yes,
have to vote on
we
it.
have a motion and a second?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, great. And if there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Chris.
So the next one, again, was sort of some strong suggestions from our attorney. None of the suggestions really were borne by Waterford issues, but there's been some clarity in the language as we look at coaches and if we ever have to do a non-renewal, which is now becoming very similar to what we do a non-renewal for the future. So this is just a clarification of the language.
Thank you. Do a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Jody. Second by Dave. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion carries as well. Thank you. That takes us to our next one, occupational exposure to blood-borne pathogens.
And, this was a lot of changes from the policy to the regs as well, and it's more of a formatting from when we used the case service in 2003 to now having a shipment delivery requirement that our policy. We want policies generally broad statements, generally short in nature, and regulations where the majority of the details are.
And that's going to be a trend as we go through on policy renewal. So that's why that's moved to the regs. We did talk a little bit too about the safety measures with the part-time.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a
Make a motion.
to accept? We should actually be identifying policy as we
Okay.
go through it. So is there a motion to accept 4147.1? policy
And 4.2.7.1. Yes.
Thank you.
Second.
By Tony. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. I think now, Greg, we're on students. There's 5,000.
Right. And that's also a second reading. As we looked at this, really, non-discrimination policy, it was in the instruction section, and I can't explain the rationale back then. Upon reading it now, it makes much more sense to locate this in the student section. And again, this is similar with the extended part of the solution to gender identity.
Right, so the lines separately. So, is there a motion to accept policy 5100?
5100?
5100, okay. It's going quicker. Okay, then. Second? Second by David. All those in favor? Aye. I didn't hear anything. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That motion carries as well. The next...
And the last of the second reading policy is sexual discrimination, sexual harassment students. And again, we've had some further clarification, really legislatively true, from situations that have occurred, fortunately not here in Waterford, but they're nonetheless good to have in policy.
Right, and the policy is being sent quite a time going through this, so we appreciate that. Thank you. Are there any questions? Is there a motion to accept policy 5145.5, policy?
So moved.
Thank you, Tony.
Second.
Second by Kevin. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, that, I believe, takes us through all of the second reading policies, and thank you. And this will take us tonight to our first reading of 5 new policies that came to the Policy Committee. Community Relations was the first.
So, with the relation policy, we're basically wanting to incorporate some of the extra security measures for which our new schools all have, primarily, and again, to kind of separate the policy from the regulation. So we see some of the strictened language really put in the regulation piece. And when we talk about visitors to schools, we generally think of the best case scenario where everyone is welcome and they're selected. There's a 1% time where sometimes people's intentions for visiting are not as hospitable, and different questions about observation of teachers and the like. We wanted to give the principal a little sort of defining the regulations to make it clear to the 1% of visitors that we're here for.
Thank you. And the policy committee said they were pleased to see the first part of the policies. They're welcoming the parents in, but just putting some guidelines in place. So, are there any questions regarding this policy? This, again, is the first reading. This will come back. Greg?
Well, I was wondering about that first sentence. It's a new world that we live in. We're really going out there and strongly welcoming all these people. And I don't know if I feel that way. It takes our staff time to walk around with people. We don't want them wandering around unsupervised. I suppose we have to have some kind of gentle, welcoming language, but that's a little bit strong for me. And then the second sentence hardly strikes me as a policy sentence.
Which one?
It's speculation. I think that school improvements often come from suggestions originating in such visits. Maybe they do, but I don't recall any examples of that. Maybe the committee has some. That's certainly not a policy statement.
I can certainly see your point on the traffic science spread. On the first sentence, I understand your point, but we also do have all visitors have to be checked into the office. There has to be a designated purpose. We do sort of check for if there's a person on the registry that shouldn't be in school. So the intent, as you articulated, is really to try to have a welcoming sort of sentiment from the board to the general public.
I wouldn't want that strong statement
So
welcoming to possibly...
I had a manager one time who put this in you're not half pregnant kind of analogy. You either recommend or you encourage something or you don't, so you don't need to say strongly. You can take that out and change the tone of it, but it still has the same meaning.
Just change it to welcomes and just eliminate.
I would like to see the Board of Education staff, the school system, wish to provide a mechanism to welcome members of the community, parents, and other interested persons to visit. So you're saying that you want to provide for it, but you're not going out on a limb in any one direction, and then you're allowing your administrators strictly to implement the mechanism by which such visits would be achieved.
Do you want to read
Good,
the
yeah,
sentence?
I don't know if I can. Sure. The Board of Education staff, the school system, wish to provide a means by which to welcome members of the community, parents, etc.
thank you.
And you would like to strike the second sentence?
I would.
You'd like to strike school improvement often comes in.
Yeah,
Absolutely, it's really not a policy.
Okay.
sentence.
Well, and I think also, with rewriting the first sentence, it really eliminates, because the second sentence was really saying why you were strongly recommending it, because you were going to get these ideas. Well, if you're not so sure you're going to get those ideas and you're not strongly recommending, then, as Greg said, why have the sentence there? I understand that, yeah.
I don't see any objection to it, but I do think it's important as the state board, though, that we allow parents and people. We don't want to look like we're shutting down, but we want to find a good balance where people are still welcoming. We have the regulations that set it, but I think your wording is fine. I don't see any reason that we can't go. And you've copied that down for
I
us.
have, so,
We'll bring that back.
Next meeting, you'll see those changes. Are there any other recommended changes to the policy or the regulation for visits to schools?
How does it read as we have it?
So the Board of Education staff of the school system wish to provide a mechanism, a means, by which to welcome members of the community, parents, and other persons interested in visiting the schools.
Okay, thank you.
And just so the board knows, as you review this between now and the next reading, if something else comes up, you can always send them to Craig and myself, and they'll be back.
This is the purpose of having the first reading, is to do those clarifications. So thank you. All of these suggestions are welcome.
Thank you. Greg, are there any more suggestions for this one? Okay, that moves us to the idea. This is purely compliance with the Harvard Business.
When we did a kind of a look, really we were missing a policy statement for which we have been in full compliance with. So it was a recommendation from our legal counsel to have this policy statement in there. The regulations were already operationalized by our Director of Special Services. This is really just to kind of codify that into the board's law, if you will, so you can follow.
Again, this is just complying with all this, and we're doing that. We learn more about it, but this is good to have it right here in the regulation piece. So, thank you. We'll move that. Is there any questions? No? Okay.
And then, this policy has been revised, and added procedures to conduct. Basically, we've done some minor modifications in this policy. We have included as a secondary measure to do sex offender registry checks. And so our HR directors will be working with our school principals to really operationalize that. So we've had some meetings with the police department and HR directors to find what's the most efficient way to do this.
Basically, it was adding the sex offender with check onto it. Yeah. And we eliminated one piece on the credit check. Okay. Great. Are there any questions? Okay, again, first reading. That takes us to the last one, sir, I believe.
And consistent with some public act requirements, basically, again, adding language to explicitly prohibit employees from preventing or attempting to prevent other employees from making these kind of reports. So that was
I think it's strengthened.
letter G of the policy statement.
Right.
And in the regulation, there was a strictening of some and a clarification. And even though we have a restraint and seclusion rooms being listed in our regulations, it's not a practice that we have, but by clarifying the process, it really safeguards to make sure that no one acts upon themselves as an individual to do something for which we don't want to do this.
Right. It's good to have it written out. You know, don't use that. Okay. So that's, as you can see, very ambitious policy committee and group at work. And thank everyone for reviewing, and again, still have time before the second reading of the next meeting. So I believe that takes us to our adjournment.
Dan.
Kevin, you're considered adjourned. I should have said thank you all for being out this evening. I know it's a busy time of year. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everyone. Thank you very much.
And we have a busy January. We'll be seeing a lot of one another.
We will. Thank you.